Disturbing new details about the growing threat of ISIS. Reuters reporting a diplomat says ISIS unleashed mustard gas on dozens of Kurdish fighters in Iraq last August. This after chemical tests by an international watchdog group. Another diplomat says the weapons may have come from Syria's stockpile. All this as the Daily Beast raises new allegations that the Obama administration skewed intelligence on ISIS to advance the narrative the U.S. is winning the battle. It says top U.S. military analysts gave warnings of the manipulated intel to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. A source telling the Daily Beast, quote, in the survey from the ODNI, the analysts accused their superiors of editing or rejecting reports that cast doubt on whether the U.S.-led campaign against ISIS was dealing a crippling blow. And they accused senior CENTCOM intelligence officials of attempting to delete emails and other reports that provided evidence of their manipulation. All right, this is the second set of accusations that reports about ISIS may, in fact, be inaccurate. So, General, I will start with the mustard gas. I mean, it's very disturbing. Not surprising, though, that ISIS would be able to get their hands on the chemical weapons. What's the biggest threat? The stockpiles in Syria or Iraq, or that ISIS may be able to manufacture these rudimentary weapons themselves?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in Syria, it's more dangerous. And when the deal was made, remember, back in 2013, between the United States, including Russia and Syria, that they would get rid of all the chemical weapons. Many observers, to include myself, said they are never going to get rid of all the chemical weapons. It is fool's gold to change that reality. They will not even give up all their production capabilities. And that has turned out to be true. And at least 10% or more has been left behind to include production capability. So that's a fact. Now ISIS marauds over Syria, seizing one military base after another. It is not too surprising that they get their hands on these capabilities. And knowing the ambitions that they have, this is a significant threat. And this threat in Syria is more significant than what has taken place in Iraq. They have used chemical weapons. The same watchdog group that you're referring to, Kennedy, reported last year that they used chemical weapons in Syria, and now they're also reporting that they used them in Iraq. I believe both of those reports. This is a reliable agency that's doing it, and there's been anecdotal information before that. So, yes, now we have chemical weapons in the hands of a terrorist organization that wants to do damage outside the region, in Europe, in other places in the world, the United States, etc. And they will use whatever means they can to accomplish their goals. They're a brutal, barbaric organization, and now they have something that is dangerous. Including
disseminating instructions on how to manufacture some of these weapons on your own for, worldwide ISIS followers. Let's shift a little bit, Andrea, to the political ramifications of fudging the intel. How serious is this?
It's very serious. And when you look in totality at what the administration has done, your jaw hits the floor. So we have the FBI and the DHS deliberately misdirecting funds to fight right-wing extremism, not radical Islamic jihadism. They're releasing prisoners from Gitmo back to the battlefield. They're strangling rules of engagements on our military. There's an Iran deal that's empowering Iran. Also, intel reports scrubbed about the threat of Iran earlier this year to make it more palpable when we handed them $150 billion. Also, we're importing Islamist refugees to the United States. There's been a stonewalling of Extortion 17, the helicopter that took the lives of SEAL Team 6. We also see now they're scrubbing these intelligence reports. It makes you wonder, when you look at the list that I just came up with, and it's a lot longer, what is the administration doing and whose side are they on?
And how could they claim to be the most transparent administration in history when the president is going out saying one thing, we're making gains against ISIS, the airstrikes are working, and then you have, senior officials deleting emails. It seems like we've heard this record before, and I don't like dancing to it.
Well, look, the Obama administration has been embroiled in scandal for years. Ever since President Obama came to the office, he promised he'd be the most transparent president in the history of the country. Obviously, we don't want to be transparent with military intelligence. That's not something that we want. But when you're talking about reports about intelligence being deliberately changed to show a rosier picture of what's going on, when the administration publicly is saying to the American people, things are going great, that is putting political calculations above national security, and it has huge implications on not only national security of the United States, but on how we handle the threat as a whole. And you can't take care of the threat if you're not willing to acknowledge it. And for the president to quite frankly, lie to the American people when they're talking about the fact that ISIS is being contained when clearly they're not, that really serves as a real problem about what their priorities are and how seriously they take the threat.
It's not even that, because you think about politics. If this were politically beneficial to the president, then it would mean that these points resonate with Democrats. They don't. I know a number of Democrats that are bothered by the actions of this administration that, when you look at them, are essentially empowering the enemy, not hurting the enemy. And we have a president, Rachel, who says flat out that we can absorb another 9/11, and then 4 weeks ago said there are no, quote, existential threats against the United States of America. That is fundamentally false.
Absolutely. And I know the general said, you know, we want to turn the page on the Iraq war, but just imagine, I mean, look at the attention that the press put on, you know, WMDs, did we not have it, were they lying about it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, can you imagine, General, if a Republican president had been caught? I mean, caught. And by the way, the Daily Beast is no conservative rag. I mean, this is a liberal website. If they had been caught cooking the books and changing the data, and another question is, how does that change how the generals advise if they're getting information that's not correct? How does that change how they advise on the war?
Yeah, the major investigation taking place at Central Command headquarters over this very issue of manipulating intelligence information at a relatively high level inside of Central Command that the analysts were very frustrated with, and they are the whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Most of us who have connections there believe the whistleblowers, frankly, and it's sad commentary. And obviously what they were doing is they were laying out a story which was an indictment of what we were doing. The strategy was not succeeding, and ISIS was making progress, and they were minimizing, obviously, their progress and maximizing what we were doing. We were reporting on level of effort, and you see that, and it can be very misleading. Number of airstrikes, number of buildings we've killed, knocked down, number of trucks, number of soldiers, enemy soldiers that we've killed. That deals with level of effort. The real analysis and what the analysts in Central Command, what they were doing was being denied to the leadership is a comprehensive evaluation of an organization, its ability to command and control, its territorial control, and its financial economic situation, its operational tactical initiative that it has, its resiliency, its ability to recruit. These are the way we evaluate an organization's capabilities.
Honest measurements, and unfortunately honesty is the first thing sacrificed here, and I can't help but wonder if that's what puts lives at risk. All right, just days before the Nevada Democratic caucus signs Team Hillary starting to get a little worried as volunteers for Bernie Sanders flood the state and his aides raise new hope for a potential victory. Is Hillary in trouble? And a group of woman senators, yes, they are speaking out saying Hillary is dealing with a sexist double standard on the campaign trail. Are they right? Or is Hillary playing the lady card by proxy? We will discuss heatedly in moments. Stay right here.